Modern software development teams are under intense pressure to create high-quality software rapidly and efficiently. More and more companies today are turning to the DevOps development methodology to make that goal a reality. But rapid development, though beneficial for all, can't come at the expense of security. So then, how exactly do we strike a balance between quality, speed, efficiency, and yet deliver safe and secure software applications? That we'll leave to the practices of DevSecOps. In this program, we'll explain and explore the DevSecOps concept with the help of expert Bob Aiello. Aiello is a seasoned software development coach, architect, instructor, and technology journalist. He has over 25 years of experience being on the front lines of software development. There are several teaching points in this program. First, we'll introduce the concept of DevSecOps and why it matters. Second, a discussion about security vulnerabilities in the development lifecycle. Then, our expert offers his thoughts on building secure systems. Next, we'll hear about building an effective DevSecOps function. We'll then conclude with final thoughts and advice from our expert, Bob Aiello. Now, let's begin our report. It appears DevOps has been getting its share of paparazzi-like attention over the past several years. This celebrity status is being driven by its growing reputation as the development model du jour, a model that succeeds at delivering the development team's idea of triple play: shorter cycle times, automation, and cross-functional integration. Ultimately, the DevOps model enables organizations to have a better shot at achieving a faster time to market for their products, which ultimately leads to satisfied customers and an improved bottom line. So, with all the benefits DevOps brings to the table, where does it leave the age-old issue of information security? Good question, no doubt. Well, have no fear, because development organizations are now pushing beyond the traditional DevOps model and adopting DevSecOps. With DevSecOps, security plays a key role in all aspects of application development. It allows teams to reap all the advantages of the DevOps model while reducing security risks in the software they create. We asked our guest expert, Bob Aiello, to define DevSecOps from his point of view and discuss its merits and advantages.
DevSecOps is a term that's being used to describe the work that is done when development, your developers, work closely with not only their operations colleagues, but the experts in the information security as well. And information security is a really key part of this. They have specialized expertise. So really combining the knowledge of the developers, operations, and information security becomes a really key capability. And we're starting to call this practice continuous security, where we look at security from the very beginning of the life cycle all the way through its development, architecture, every aspect, the testing, and really its operational components as well. So DevSecOps is really focusing on the combined knowledge as well as the whole life cycle to develop highly secure systems.
Aiello then discussed why addressing security from the inception of the development process is so critically important.
Well, too often folks focus just on testing security at the end, and that's not acceptable. While penetration testing is very important and other types of security testing is very important, if you don't look at security from the very beginning of your life cycle, your systems just are not going to be secure. Are your requirements developed correctly? Is the system designed to be secure? When you start assembling those components, sometimes the interfaces end up being the weakest link. Is the code being written in a way that is highly secure? I've seen some developers where they were coding along and they forgot to check something as simple as a return code as their code got persisted into a database, and that mistake ended up being a hacker's dream. So being able to consider introducing secure code throughout the whole life cycle is very, very important if you really want to have secure systems.
Guest expert Bob Aiello has years of experience in software development. He is well-versed in the importance of establishing a robust team culture to ensure successful DevOps initiatives. We asked Aiello for advice on implementing DevSecOps.
Well, DevOps places a real strong focus on creating that high-performance, self-managing team where folks come from different perspectives, share their expertise, teach each other, and really share the work and the knowledge. So in DevSecOps, kind of our focus is having the developers who are, well, they're the ones who are choosing the technology, they're the ones who are writing the code, they're the experts. But also the operations folks, they very often understand how the system is going to operate in production. So I like to say to the developers, hey, developer knows how the code is going to run on his laptop, but the operations folks understand how the application will run in production. Now we're starting to realize the importance of including security engineers, folks who really have that deep level of knowledge of how to create secure systems from the very beginning of the software and systems development lifecycle. There's many other stakeholders as well, QA, testing, even the product owners that have to be part of this. But DevSecOps is really taking that cross-functional view to be able to develop highly secure systems.
Development professionals are well aware of challenges when it comes to delivering secure applications. Hackers are relentless in their efforts to expose flaws and weaknesses that may ultimately allow them to fully compromise an application's security. We asked Bob Aiello if there were any specific points in the lifecycle where security vulnerabilities were typically introduced.
Security vulnerabilities can get introduced at almost any stage of the lifecycle. If you don't develop requirements that are consistent, that really create a secure system from the very beginning, if you don't design your architecture and the whole coding strategy to have secure protocols, you really have to take a very holistic view to this. Developers, during the development process, can make key mistakes that lead to code not being secure. If testers don't have a good sense of how to test the whole system from end to end, that can also lead to security vulnerabilities. And don't forget the human side of this. I've seen environments where the system was very secure, but someone was able to con a help desk technician into giving out a password. So you have to really take that holistic systems view of end to end, how do I have a secure system and make sure that I can always react and address any of the security vulnerabilities that are going to evolve.
As Aiello just stated, developers may make key mistakes during the development process that lead to code not being totally secure. But what exactly does highly secure code look like?
So in a perfect world, what I really want to do is use techniques like cryptography and actually code sign using a asymmetric cryptography where I'm signing my code with a private key and I can prove that it's cryptographically secure, that it hasn't been tampered with, something called non-repudiation where I can't deny that it came from a trusted source, to make sure that that secure trusted base is fully verifiable at a physical layer. And the cool thing about that is if you develop that kind of a system and there is some sort of a security penetration, the system can self-evaluate that it's been tampered with and notify you through an automated procedure that the code has been tampered with and that you have a problem that you have to address.
Being proactive about security and keeping one step ahead of the bad guys is just part of the daily routine for today's software development professionals. New advances, such as self-diagnosing and self-healing systems, are helping with the daily battle to keep cyber criminals at bay and critical systems safe and secure. Aiello explains.
You want to make sure that you can create a system that can self-diagnose it. It knows what to monitor in the environment. It can recognize if something has occurred. So if code has been tampered with, you deployed one baseline of code and now there are some changes there that you can't quite explain, that the system can self-identify. Well, that's the first step, throwing out that red light and identifying, hey, something's wrong here. A hacker's penetrated the system, or perhaps some administrator simply made a mistake and made a change to the system by a human error. So then you want to be able to make sure you can rebuild the system. So part of that is called infrastructure as code, where you can rebuild your machines from the ground up, be able to deploy the applications in an automated fashion and very quickly get the system back to a known state. So having that capability to monitor the baseline, to be able to understand if anything has changed that shouldn't have changed, and be able to rebuild the code in a secure way is very important. You know, hackers are kind of inconsiderate people. They don't tell you in advance if they're going to penetrate your system and give you their code in advance so you can create a little signature and be able to identify when some malware is there. They're out there changing your system, so you can't rely on your ability to find malware on your servers. What you have to do is know what code should be there and have an automated procedure to detect if it's been tampered with. And then the whole aspect of self-healing systems is that you can just sideline a server that's been tampered with, rebuild it quickly from scratch, and deploy the right code baseline so you get back to a known state. That is what the secure, trusted base is all about.
Building secure systems is a tough job, to say the least. Even when using the greatest care and having access to a highly skilled team, the potential is there for vulnerabilities to be introduced, and then somewhere down the line, a problem ensues. We asked Bob Aiello, with the odds not exactly in the development team's favor, what advice could he offer professionals trying to build secure systems? Here's what he had to say.
Well, the first thing to realize is your system's going to be penetrated. Your system's going to be... there's always a way to penetrate a system. And I've done a fair amount of ethical hacking. I've always found a way to penetrate a system that I needed to get into. There's always some weak link in the chain. And that's just the nature of these systems are complicated. There's many different parts to them. And frankly, that's okay. Once you realize any system can be hacked, any system can be penetrated, then you start to think about, well, how do I really surveil that environment? Malware, trying to find it is like a needle in a haystack. You're not going to be able to find it. So instead, you really have to take this DevSecOps approach of combining the expertise of the folks who wrote the code with the folks who are going to operate it, with those information security experts. And then you can create a holistic plan for being able to really monitor your environment, address any security vulnerabilities, and then very quickly, if you've got these procedures set up, you can get your systems back to a known state, even if they have in fact been penetrated.
Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Sony Pictures, and Target are all familiar names that have fallen victim of late to cyber criminals. The list keeps growing, and the methods used to steal anything from money to intellectual property and health data to credit card and social security numbers keeps evolving. Like a chameleon changes its skin color, hackers come up with new tools and methods to undermine and pilfer from their victims. With hackers changing their techniques so often, it's almost impossible for organizations to keep up with the challenge. One new tool in the arsenal is behaviorally profiling the attack vectors. A vector is a path or a tool that an actor uses to attack the target.
Well, this is one of the more exciting aspects of software security that's evolving these days. We're starting to behaviorally profile the nature of the attacks. And this is very interesting. We actually watch as hackers try to penetrate the systems, and we see what their different exploits are. And we start to behaviorally profile all of the different types of penetrations that are occurring. And they may occur at many different layers. It could be that they're attacking the operating system or they're attacking the application. So the first thing is you have to be able to monitor your whole environment and be able to start to spot different trends. Now, it also helps to know what other systems are being penetrated in the industry. It could be that an attack on a retailer is using a method that someone might try to employ on your systems tomorrow. So understanding system trends, different things that are occurring, you have to be able to understand the whole nature of the attack. And as I said, be able to behaviorally profile your code to be able to understand all the different types of vulnerabilities that are out there. Frankly, when you do that, you start to get a much stronger sense of how your system is behaving. And that's great from a quality point of view, it's great from a performance point of view, and most of all, making sure that your customers are getting what they need. So there's real benefits from these methodologies that we're beginning to employ these days.
How much security is enough? Well, that's a question pondered by many a development team. Too little, and you give the hackers a golden ticket, a free pass to do as they wish with your enterprise systems and applications. Too much, and the employees will be raising complaints about the difficulties in accessing the key systems and data required to do their jobs. So, what to do with this dilemma that literally can affect an organization from the loading dock up to the boardroom? We asked Bob Aiello for his input on getting security right.
Well, I sometimes talk about how security can frankly be a little dysfunctional, and I'm not looking to pick on anybody here, but policy's not going to keep your code secure. So you have a bunch of rules, and a lot of times the security team is focused a little too much on rules, and rules are important, don't get me wrong here, but that can't be the only thing you focus on. You have to make sure you haven't created a situation where the system is so secure that nobody can get any work done. So the right balance, frankly, sometimes I find a few security professionals, and again, I'm not trying to malign anybody here, I'm just identifying a challenge that I see. Sometimes folks are obstructing rather than really working with the whole team to get things done. So you want security professionals that are highly trained to the point where they can work effectively with developers and with operations folks, and not just kind of focused on the policy and a few things that they have heard at different conferences, those are real things that I've dealt with in the trenches in helping organizations set up these practices. So the end result in a dysfunctional environment like that is that development isn't going to respect information security, and that's very bad. You really have to have a team where the mutual respect is there, the expertise is there, the sharing of knowledge, and most of all, the dedication and determination to achieve the right results for the customer. So you want to make sure that folks aren't trying to work around each other or bypass controls. So a lot of times I find that developers are actually start hacking the systems themselves because they're so frustrated they can't get things done. And they're confronting so much noise that isn't really effective at securing anything. It's just slowing people down. So what I really want is that DevSecOps cross-functional high-performance team where we look at what's the right balance. What are the right security policies I need in place? Let's right-size this and make sure I can get the work done, but still have a completely secure system.
As Aiello stated, finding a balance and right-sizing security is a key aspect of a secure system. Another is staying on top of some of the new security technology and solutions that are up and coming. We asked our expert what's on his radar as far as next generation in cybersecurity.
We have some exciting practices that are evolving even as we speak. Some of them around what are called microservices, where we develop these very, very small components and we deploy them in the technology that's evolving that's known as container-based deployments. And that's incredibly exciting. We're deploying thousands of these containers with microservices, and that creates an environment where we have these self-contained services that are highly scalable. They're very resilient, and container strategies have some unique properties around them that are also very exciting. We have the capability to deploy thousands of these containers at a time to be able to meet even the most peak usage needs. And if one of the containers starts to have trouble, we can sideline that one and quickly replace it, again, using infrastructure as code. So what I always describe to folks is picture your software almost as if, say, a skin on your hand. You get a little paper cut, and geez, that's annoying. Let me put a little Band-Aid on it and stay away from it for a day. But it starts to self-heal. I want to create software that can self-heal. I want to create software that can self-identify problems and can quickly regenerate itself, replenish itself, so that it is always returning to a state where it's at optimum capability. And that's really what we're getting with microservices and containers. The field is very new. we're really just at the very beginning. There's a lot of challenges. We're not quite there yet is what I'm saying, but we're getting there, and it's exciting.
Another key issue in the application development world today is that of cloud computing. The now mature technology is at the forefront of delivering all kinds of IT services today. The benefits of cloud are well known, such as increased operational efficiency, lower computing cost, and turn-on-a-dime access to the latest applications and services that the businesses demand. Security, on the other hand, continues to be an area of concern, as businesses and vendors are forced to deal with a sea of rapidly evolving threats. With many organizations now focused on cloud-based development, we asked Bob Aiello how that might impact DevSecOps.
So the cloud creates new challenges for security and also new capabilities. So first thing you got to realize is that your cloud provider, while they may be incredibly capable, they may not have the same sense of priority that you do. So understand that even though you've using a cloud service provider, you're still responsible for delivering your customers the security and reliability that they demand. On the other hand, cloud brings you many benefits that can help you. For example, your cloud service provider may have some real experts in the security field that may know things about different vulnerabilities and different types of attacks. And if you reach out to them, they may partner with you, resulting in a much more secure system. Plus, the capabilities of having elastic resources at your disposal. You know, security vulnerabilities can occur when systems are overtaxed. So being able to spin up additional servers and meet those peak usage needs, having unlimited scalability is a really key aspect of this. So you got to ask yourself, do you trust your service provider? Are they really a partner in this? Are they giving you knowledge? Is this a really good relationship? So there's a little bit of the DevOps culture between you and your cloud service provider. So while I always tell people to be careful to understand what the challenges are, there's also a lot of capabilities that the cloud is bringing us too.
Organizations are routinely faced with making a choice between buying or building a required business solution. These decisions can't be made lightly. Aiello tells us why a thorough investigation must be made before deciding on the right solution approach.
So vendors often provide packaged software which has incredible capabilities. They've been impacted by other customers. They've often addressed many of the challenges, added features that you didn't even realize you wanted until you start to see what got there. So vendor solutions can be great. But frankly, in practice, I've also seen some vendors fall short where they haven't really implemented the right level of security. Their focus is on selling their product. And in some cases, I've seen some vendors fall short. So I think you have to kind of audit your vendor. You have to make sure, do they have the right capabilities in place? Are they baselining their code? Are they really implementing all the CM and DevOps best practices so that they are creating secure baselines? And is the code that you're getting from the vendor up to the level of quality? Because ultimately, even if you buy software from somebody else, your customers are holding you accountable for providing them with safe and reliable services.
Guest expert Bob Aiello went on to comment about another security challenge often seen today, when two organizations come together as a result of an acquisition or a merger.
So one of the big challenges that most organizations that are larger, just as an example, typically have different organizations that they've acquired, they may have merged. So sometimes you have different subunits that are there. It's almost a matter of merging different companies together, in fact. So you may have security capabilities in one part of the organization that don't necessarily match with the security capabilities of the other. So understanding in a big organization how those units got brought together, what their practices are there places where you can get some alignment of your security practices, or are there unique requirements? You know, for example, if you buy a credit card processing company, they may have different security requirements than, say, your reporting unit. So you really have to consider how do those different groups fit together and be able to have the right balance.
DevOps has enabled teams to build, test, and deploy great software at a rapid pace. The next logical step is to firmly integrate security into the process by establishing a DevSecOps program within the organization. By no means is this an easy task. Here's some advice from our expert on building an effective DevSecOps function.
An effective DevSecOps function is always looking at itself and continuously improving. You're combining the expertise of these different experts. So I always start by, what are the security vulnerabilities that are out there? What are the different attack vectors? Who is trying to be able to penetrate my systems, and what methods are they using? So I want to profile those attacks. I want to be able to have feedback loops so that if there are incidents, I learn from each of those problems that occur. You know, one thing that organizations often fail to do is incidents that occur or problems that occur, those are great learning experiences. So you can't be afraid when things go wrong. You have to make sure that you're creating a feedback loop so you benefit from that experience, even when it's a little bit painful. So being able to develop these techniques enables your team to respond in real time, to be able to develop the capabilities that when something goes wrong, everybody can kind of all hands on deck, jump on board, and address those challenges. So a lot of what I also want to focus on is, what are the industry threats that are out there? What are the common things that are occurring? What are my competitors often running into? And this is an area where even companies that compete with each other are often willing to share some of their experiences, because being able to be secure is very important. Even if I compete with you, if I'm transferring money from my system to yours or vice versa, I want both sides of that transaction to be secure. So this is something that we can have a shared interest in. And security as competency is very important. One thing that I often find is that companies fail to invest enough time and resources so that their teams have the knowledge of how to identify security vulnerabilities and also the expertise to address them. So remember, this is a journey where we're teaching folks, we're getting them to share their expertise, and we're developing the human resources in the organization to be able to deal with these sort of threats. And you want to make sure that you take that broad systems view. And, you know, I often think of law enforcement as an example of where this really comes into play. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of being a volunteer in law enforcement for many years, and I've learned from some of the professionals how they address the different challenges. And when you have that kind of environment where people can learn from each other and they understand how to go about and solve the different kind of problems that occur, that's where you get those capabilities and the teams that can be highly effective.
DevSecOps makes thinking about security a part of every stage of the development process, from planning to development to implementation and beyond. DevSecOps helps teams make sure that every piece of code is as safe and secure as possible. Bob Aiello commented on getting started with DevSecOps.
So you always start by assessing where you are today. You ask the question, what's going well, what could be improved, and you make sure that you include all the right stakeholders. And this is where I find some organizations can be a little bit challenged. They may involve the senior managers. The senior managers may be kind of focused on showing that their teams are fine, everything's fine here, nothing to worry about. Whereas if you get to a couple of folks in the trenches, they may say, hey, you know what, this technology that we're working with is a little old, it's a little vulnerable, we probably should upgrade this. So you want to make sure that you're considering all the different views in the organization, sharing that knowledge and expertise, and identifying any places where things have to get improved and fixed. So I want to do that assessment, what's going well, what could be improved. Make sure you don't start fixing things that aren't broken. And make sure that if there's a set of priorities, you focus on the first things first. But really what you want to do is understand, what do highly secure systems look like? Well, I mentioned that before. They are secure, trusted application bases. They are often cryptographically signed. Well, how do I get from what I have today to that very, very secure system? And what practices do I have to change? I'm not going to be able to change everything overnight, and that's good. That's not a problem. You want to be able to look at this. The train is moving, but I can improve things in small steps and really make sure that we're heading in the right direction and we're continuously evolving the organization to implement these practices around DevSecOps and be able to create highly secure, highly reliable systems.
In this report, expert Bob Aiello introduced viewers to the concept of DevSecOps. He then discussed security vulnerabilities in the development cycle. Next, Bob offered guidance on building secure systems and an effective DevSecOps function. We'll now end our program with some concluding thoughts and advice from our expert.
The most important thing is to understand that every security breach you run into is a lesson learned. Don't ever miss the opportunity to understand, was there human error involved? Was my technology not quite up to where it should be? Was I not aware of certain things I had to monitor? Or were folks just afraid to give me a heads up that there was some kind of a problem? I want to learn from my mistakes. I want the whole team to learn from their mistakes. So the most important thing in DevSecOps is to really have this high-performance cross-functional team where your developers, with their expertise, the information security experts, your operations team, your QA, your testers, product, where everybody is able to share what they know, be able to really address creating that knowledge base throughout the whole organization with a focus on achieving highly secure, very reliable systems that absolutely thrill your customers and provide the reliable, robust services they demand.
That completes our report, DevSecOps, Implementing Continuous Security in a DevOps Environment, featuring our guest expert, Bob Aiello. We'd like to thank Bob for sharing his insights and understanding of the DevOps world. I'm your host, Mike Quinlan, and thank you for watching.